Hey everyone, it's Carly Hall, and today we are going to make some Cricut Joy style cards on both the Cricut Joy and the Maker using cards that are not sold by Cricut. So to get started, I'm going to show you this first on the Cricut Joy. So I am in Projects on Design Space, and then I'm going to drop down to Cards. And you can use any one of these cards. I think there was a card that I wanted to use for the Cricut Maker, so let's do Best Wishes. It's this one right here. I'm going to make this. You can see that it's a draw and cut, and we're going to click Make It. You can't customize the Cricut Joy cards. It's just one size, and it's 4.25 by 5.5 size cards. So I'm going to show you on some cards I bought from Michaels. So we're going to click Continue and connect to our machine. Again, this is the Cricut Joy version, but I will show you how to do this on your Maker or Explore machine as well. And we're still going to choose Insert Card Cardstock because our cards are made from cardstock, and then we'll get set up on the machine side. We are using these cards from Michaels today, and they are 4.25 by 5.5. So we're going to load them onto the card mat. My card mat has seen better days, so it's not very sticky anymore, but you're going to slide it underneath this clear sticky part and line it up with the size of the card that you have, and then close it on top. Just make sure there's no debris on the card mat, and then close that shut. Once it's closed, if your mat is not sticky anymore, you'll just brayer it on so that it's nice and stuck down as best as you can. Since I'm super frugal, if my card mat is not holding it down in place, I will add some masking tape, but it looks like this will hold down just fine. Since we're starting with the pen, we're going to load our pen into the machine. This is a Cricut Joy pen, so we'll load that in. It does come with the machine, and you'll just set that in and close the clamp. They are different than your Maker and Explore pens. And then we'll load this under the rollers. From your computer or device, you'll click Go, and your Cricut Joy will begin to draw. Once the Joy is done drawing, you'll want to switch out the pen. So it'll prompt you to switch out the pen on the computer or device you're using. You'll just switch that out, load the blade in, and then from your computer or device, click Go. Once your machine is done cutting, you're going to unload it from your computer or your device. So click Unload. And then your card, if this is the first time cutting your card with this setting, before you unload it, you may want to check to make sure it cut through. But when you're unloading your card, be very careful depending on the material that your card is, because your ink might smear. So I'm going to be really careful to pop this off and then just slide it out. And then I'm going to take this over and I'm going to spray it with a matte clear sealer. This is optional, but you don't want your pen to smear, so I'm just going to lay this flat and spray it with some clear sealer. So I just sprayed it. We'll set this off to the side to let it dry, but you can see that none of my pen bled when I sprayed it, so I'll let that dry. And then this is the matte clear sealer that I used. If you're using a card that doesn't have any type of sheen, you won't need this step, but since mine has a sheen, let me show you what happens if you don't spray on it. So it'll just start to bleed a little bit when you rub it. So I'll show you after my other card is done how this won't bleed anymore like that. To get the pieces off your card, you can use this for a different project if you'd like, but you'll just use your scraper and just scrape all that off. And you can see I've gotten a lot of use out of this card mat. So these are relatively inexpensive, like $5.99 to replace, but I have not replaced mine yet, and it's still holding up. Make sure to store it with your liner on to preserve the stickiness. And now we're going to cut our insert. You can use your Cricut Joy for this step, but since it's just a rectangle, I'm just going to use this paper trimmer, and I've trimmed it down to 4 inches wide. So it's 4 inches wide, and then I'm going to cut it down to 5 1/4. Line that up with the 5 1/4. And if you didn't know, this little arm slides out from underneath, and you can line that up. My card is still drying, but you can see that it no longer smears. So once it's completely dry, you can stick it in, but for this tutorial, I'll just show you now. But you do want to wait until it's completely dry to handle it so that you don't get any smearing. But you'll pop out all the corners and then just slide your cardstock into the notches. And here is our finished card. If you want to add some spray adhesive onto the back side so that it sticks a little bit better, you can absolutely do that. And these cards come with envelopes. So you are good to go. You have your envelope already made and you can just write your sentiment inside and send it off. So now let me show you how to do this same process on the Maker or Explore machines. So we're going to finish with this, and then we are going to switch our machine type to the Cricut Maker or Explore, whatever machine you're using. And you won't have those same card options since those are made specifically for the Joy. So we are going to look for the images, and you can go to image set. So I'm on images now. And if your page looks like this, you'll just click on all images and then choose image set. And then you'll just type cards. You can find that there are a lot of cards that have that Cricut Joy style. And you can see that you can design your own. So if you haven't seen my full video on this, I will link it in the video description so you can learn how to do that. So I already found the matching card, and this image came from the image set. Let's see. So this came from the Quick Cuts Everyday Cards by Alexis Maddox. And you can see that there are a ton of options here. So I just chose the Best Wishes one, which is somewhere in here, right here. And then I inserted that onto my canvas. So now it's on my canvas. We know that we don't need the envelope, so we can delete that. And then the card is 8.5 by 5.5, which we know is the right size that we want. Now this is kind of a little bit of a hack, but I'm going to show it to you because I want you to see how to use just the cards that you pre-buy. But you can also just cut a piece of cardstock using your Cricut machine, and you don't need to use the pre-made cards. But if you want to use the pre-made cards, then follow this tutorial. We are going to start by drawing a rectangle that is 8.5 by 5.5. So these same dimensions. So we're just going to type out 8.5 by 5.5. And then we're going to use that in a second. Then we're going to click on this group here, and we're going to detach it and choose the card, the cut layer right here. So this cut layer has the cut on the outside as well as all these cuts on the inside. We're going to choose contour, and we're going to deselect that big contour area here. So we just want to delete the rectangle. Everything else is still highlighted. And then we're going to hide that. So now we have these cut lines. I'm actually going to hide this layer so you can see. So we have these cut lines as well as this score line. We're going to attach all these together. And then we're going to bring this over to the side. And we're going to center align this vertically. And then we're going to eyeball it and align it so that the cut lines look even on the side. So now it looks good. We are going to change this to a score line, and don't worry, it's going to get a little bit hacky, but follow along here. And then we're going to delete this score line because we don't actually need that score line at all. That's more of a reference to make sure that it's in the center. So if you want to make sure that your line is exactly in the center, we can draw a 4.25 square to make sure that that line is in the center. And it looks like it actually could go over just a little bit. And then we'll align this to the center that way. Okay, so now everything is lined up. Again, we can delete that score line. This other line is really just a reference, and then we're going to attach all these together. If you're not following, don't worry. I promise it's going to make more sense when we start cutting it. And I'll link to this exact canvas so that you have it for a reference if you want to use it. This layer over here is that background insert. You can see that's 4 inches by 5.25, like the other insert card that we cut earlier by hand. So you can either cut this on your Maker or cut it by hand. We're going to cut it by hand, so I'm going to delete that. Now we're good to go. So we have our score line as a reference line, and then all of our cut lines. Oh, and our draw line too. Now we're going to click Make It. Since the Maker adds an 1/8 of an inch of a margin on the edges, I'm going to drop our card down to the 1x1 square so that we can line it up. You can also drop it down to, the 7x10, wherever you think it'll be easiest to line up. So if you want to pick something that's easier, like a 10x10, whatever you want to do to line it up, you're going to decide where you want it, and then we're going to line that same place up on the mat. So let's just do 10x10 and then continue on. We'll connect to our Maker machine, and I'm going to choose medium cardstock. Now, another hack, which I know this sounds complicated, but if you don't use these cards, it's actually, in my opinion, a little bit easier. So we're going to click Edit Tools, and we're just going to choose the scoring stylus. We're going to choose a scoring stylus since you actually don't need the scoring stylus in your machine, whereas a scoring wheel, you need to actually load it in. So we're going to choose the scoring stylus to hack it a bit, and then you'll notice that it says coming up, the black pen is next. On the mat, we're going to load the card at the 10x10 mark and just flatten that out, open all the way, and then we'll load that into the machine. Once the C begins to flash, click that. And then you'll notice that it's starting to score around the card. And again, that is just a reference line for you to know that you put it onto the mat in the right spot. Your computer or device will prompt you to load the pen in, so we'll do that now. We're going to load the pen in clamp A, and you'll want to make sure that that little triangle disappears when you push it in. So you'll click it, and the triangle will disappear, and then you can close the clamp, and then click the C button. Now your Cricut will draw, and then since the fine point blade is already installed, it'll draw, and then once it's done drawing, it will automatically begin cutting. I forgot to mention that I do move my star wheels over to the side so that my pen doesn't smear. So make sure that you move your star wheels either to the left or the right or both. And then now it's done, so we'll unload that. Don't forget to cap your pen. And I store my pens facing down so that the ink doesn't dry out. Then you'll unload your card from your mat. Typically, I flip my cards over. Just make sure that when you do that, you're very careful because you want to make sure that that ink doesn't smear. So here is our card. I'm going to go spray this, and then we'll put the insert in. Once your sealer is dry, you'll cut the 4-inch wide by 5.2 inches tall insert card. Again, you can do that on your machine or by hand, and then we'll put that inside the card. So here are the final projects. You can see that the slits on the Maker and Explore version are a little bit tinier than the Joy, so more of the insert card pops out on the Joy version, but if you want to adjust that, you absolutely can. They turned out very similar. Once you know the hacks with the score line and lining it up, it makes these projects really easy. And you don't need to use these cards on your Cricut Explore or Maker. You can actually use a sheet of cardstock. The only reason you have to use the cards on the Joy is because the footprint is too small, so there's no other way to turn this to fit. So you do need blank cards for the Joy, but with the Maker and Explore, you can use a full sheet of cardstock, and then you don't need any hacks at all. But honestly, once you get the hacks down with contouring and lining it up, it makes it really easy. I'll link to all the products I used. I'm not sure if these will be online, but you can get these in store at Michael's, and you can usually find them 60% off. So wait until you see them 60% off, and then you can get 50 sets for about $7. So pretty good deal. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like it and consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss any of my craft tutorials in the future, and hopefully you learned something new today. Let me know if you have any tips and tricks that you'd like to share with others in the comments. All right, I'll see you in the next video.